these contradicting parts of your personality or things that may be not associated with a certain stereotype that you're being pushed into, the two things can be true. And that can be your greatest strength and not necessarily weakness to fix.
Hello, I'm your host, Sam East, and welcome to Diverse, a sweet podcast. Today, we're talking about authentic leadership, what it really means to show up as yourself in engineering, how that evolves over time, and why embracing who you are is a strength rather than something to fix. Our guest today is Kearney Hawkins, a senior staff R&D engineer in the Peripheral Intervention Business Unit at BD, a global medical technology company. Christine is a SWE Life member, and she's passionate about helping engineers embrace their full identities at work, at home, and everywhere in between. As we say every week on Diverse, many thanks to BD for sponsoring this episode. Christine, welcome to Diverse.
Thanks so much, Sam, for having me. It's honestly an honor to be here and to discuss this topic that I'm really passionate about. And fun fact about, being a life member of SWE and how long I've been involved. I first got involved with SWE in 1998 as a senior in high school, attending the Little Sisters Weekend at the University of Illinois. And so SWE's been a major influence in my life throughout college and my career. And so I'm just grateful to have an opportunity like this to contribute to the amazing community.
Oh, I love that. You have a deep history with SWE.
Absolutely.
Well, as we always do, we like to kind of get down to the core, to the beginning here. You've spent many years at BD in engineering, innovation, leadership roles. Can you, give us the origin here, introduce yourself, and share what you think when you hear the phrase being your authentic self? Because we hear that phrase thrown around a lot, but what does it mean to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start at the beginning. I have a bachelor's in bioengineering and a master's in material science and engineering from the University of Illinois. And I've been in R&D for the medical device industry for over 20 years now. And most of my career was in new product development, executing new projects and bringing ideas to life and then bringing them to the market. And in recent years, I moved further upstream to front-end innovation, where I seek out the new ideas that we're going to work on. And I work in the peripheral intervention business at BD, where we focus on minimally invasive solutions to diagnose, treat, and manage chronic diseases like cancer, end-stage kidney disease, and peripheral vascular diseases. So it's really motivating work that I'm very proud of. I'm also a wife and a mother to 3 amazing kids, and I live in the Chicago area. And then regarding the topic that we're talking about today of authenticity, the phrase being your authentic self obviously has a lot of different meanings to different people, but to me, it's about acting in ways that reflect your value and identity. It's not about oversharing or force-fitting who you are in every situation, but just simply not hiding core parts of yourself or performing to fit in. I personally behave differently in various circumstances. I joke with my husband that he wouldn't really like work Christine, but home Christine wouldn't be as effective at work, right? So, you need to adapt to your different circumstances, but it's about bringing your whole self to whatever those situations are. There are 2 reasons why I think that this is a really important topic for the SWE community and why it's really important to me. So the first is that earlier in my career, I really felt like I had to mute or downplay different parts of my personality in order to succeed. And now 20 years later, when I look back, I realize it's those differences that really made me shine and stand out and contributed to my success. So I want all the listeners that may feel like they have parts of themselves that they need to hide or they can't be their authentic selves. I hope that by sharing my story, it will encourage them to be able to bring their whole selves to work. And then the second is that, working in innovation, I realized that authenticity is just so important for innovation. Innovation benefits from having as many multiple diverse perspectives and then picking the best one to push forward, right? And so in order to have those best outcomes, it's important for people to bring their authentic whole selves. And so I want to bring that message out to the SWE community.
So Can you tell me about those experiences when you felt really pressured to perhaps tone down or change parts of your personality to fit someone else's expectation of what an engineer should look like?
Absolutely. When looking back at my career, it was the well-meaning advice that probably hurt the most because it was from people that I really respected. And it was really intended to be advice that they were trying to help me and very well intentioned. And so the first story I wanted to share is while I was still in school, a mentor of mine was giving me a compliment of, Christine, you're going to be an amazing engineer. And I can see that you're going to be an amazing mother, but I just want you to know you can't be both.
Oh,
Yeah, that was tough.
wow.
Yeah. As somebody who's wanted to be a mom longer than I wanted to be an engineer,
Hmm.
that really scared me. Right.
Hmm.
And so as I entered industry, like I definitely kept that part of myself quiet about wanting kids or sort of where I saw my future kind of home life and everything. And then even when I got pregnant and had my first kid and returned to work, I overcompensated trying to show, hey, I'm really committed to my work and, this isn't really going to affect my outcomes and everything. And so it was a really big struggle, way more than it needed to be. And so I try to now as a leader, show what it looks like to be successful in both. Now, honestly, 20 plus years later, I can honestly say that I am an outstanding engineer and I'm an amazing mom. And I even checked with my kids this morning. My daughter said I'm great, but I'd be even better if I didn't make her do so much math homework. I like to show that I am a mom and that I share experiences like when a conflict is related to my kids, because I want to be able to represent that and show that, whether you are a parent or want to be, that this is something that you can absolutely juggle, right? And so I do know other parents that don't talk about their kids at work and try to hide that self from them because they want to be taken seriously and want to continue up the career ladder. But I think that there's such a benefit to being both, right? And I think that being a mom has improved my work-life balance and has even given me a broader perspective to things. And so it's had so many amazing benefits to my career besides just being, this amazing part of my whole life. So trying to kind of pay it back, right, to people. I also try to reach out to people, that I know are expecting kids. And I take like 30 seconds and I say, hey, just wanted to let you know that I'm a mom too. And I had trouble returning work. If you ever need a sympathetic ear, like, or want to discuss like work-life balance, like I'm always here. And for the most part, most people don't take me up on that offer, but just the fact that I made that offer or that I've expressed that, hey, I juggle with these experiences too. It makes a huge difference for people. And, kind of going back to our topic, honestly, that's what I see as the value of authentic leadership. By sharing our whole truth, sometimes it eases that burden of those that follow us. So another piece of well-meaning advice that I got, and part of my personality that I tried to downplay, is I'm a pretty bubbly and enthusiastic person at work. I gave this presentation after I just took on this really big project, and it was to a group of thoracic surgeons, and it was this very big project, and we had reached a number of amazing technical milestones. And I was so excited to show this group of key opinion leaders, our prototype and our technical achievements, and show that the project was going in a positive direction. And afterwards, the business leader of our business came up and said, Christine, you're so smart. You need to act like it. And that stung because it wasn't the first time that I'd been told that, oh, I'm smarter than I come off, or, they're surprised that I'm an engineer based on my personality. But I had just given a presentation that I thought I knocked out of the park. And this is from somebody that I really respected. And so I really questioned, hey, is this aspect of me, of the bubbly and the enthusiastic person, is this going to hold me back from, advancing my career into leadership positions? But honestly, the biggest contradiction to that advice was the fact of hindsight, right? So in that room, it was the first time that I had met most of these individuals. And from that presentation, I ended up developing amazing relationships with almost everybody in that room. They saw that I was excited about the project. I was, able to speak to the technical details and the clinical impact. And so I was technically competent and somebody that they wanted to work with. And so, by showing how excited I was about something, they became excited about it too. It wasn't this weakness that I needed to fix, but it actually ended up being my strength, and it contributed to these long-term major, relationships that I formed. So a big takeaway from both these experiences is that, I don't have to fit a stereotype to succeed. And two things can be true at the same time. I can be smart and bubbly. I can be an engineer and an amazing mom. And these are my strengths, not my weaknesses. And I've been able to prove this over and over. And maybe to the listeners, these aren't things that they're currently, dealing with or that they necessarily identify with. But I think that this applies to whatever you're struggling with, right? In terms of like these contradicting parts of your personality or things that may be not associated with a certain stereotype that you're being pushed into. The two things can be true, and that can be your greatest strength and not necessarily weakness to fix.
These are incredible examples from your own life about embracing your authentic self. But at the top, we talked about innovation. Can you tell us the importance of authentic leadership and its impact specifically on innovation? And I know you even have a blog coming out about this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I am working with at BD, our Society of Women Engineers group, and creating a blog on becoming an innovator that will be posted through SWE. We don't have a date yet, but it's about my own experiences of becoming an innovator, and that early in my career, my ideas weren't really heard, but it wasn't necessarily that my ideas changed when I started to see success, but things that I changed about myself and the ways that I presented the ideas. So the three barriers that I've talked about quite a bit with this Becoming an Innovator talk is, improving my own confidence in myself and my ideas. So stop being my own biggest censor and actually, sharing these ideas, and then, making sure that I'm communicating effectively. And so that the person that I'm trying to convey this idea, that they're really understanding what I'm talking about. And then the third is better understanding what the stakeholders are looking for. So the blog will talk about different aspects of overcoming these barriers, but that's really about once you have ideas and you want to contribute, how to be able to give them life and have them heard. So thanks for bringing that up, Sam. In terms of innovation and where authenticity is so important is that innovation benefits from having a very diverse pool of ideas, and those come from having diverse perspectives. And in order to get those diverse perspectives, people need to be bringing their whole authentic selves. So a couple examples of where products that didn't have that diverse thought, and resulted in poor products. Our crash test dummies were developed after the size of an average man. And so as a result, women and people of smaller stature were 47% more likely to be seriously injured in auto accidents. And then soap dispensers, I know early prototypes and early models weren't able to detect darker skin tones. And, both those examples had all the various diverse perspectives be brought to the table, those products could have been improved. And on the flip side, there's some amazing products that, it was somebody who was using their own authentic experience that drove the development of products. So one that I love is the OXO vegetable peeler, that it was created because the inventor watched his wife with arthritis struggle using the current potato peeler. So a wider population can benefit from it, but it was based off of his authentic experience, right? Or the Keurig coffee maker, it was developed after, a couple guys were fed up with having stale coffee and they didn't want to make, a full pot just for one cup. And so, these are just little examples to think about, your experience and your ideas matter no matter who you are. So Sam, you and your experience and your ideas matter, or the listener, whoever, you are, your experience and your idea matters. Because if we're able to bring in all those perspectives and we're all able to contribute, maybe it's not the idea that carries forward, but it's all important when you're looking for the best idea. One example or one little graphic that I've seen that I love is you've got four people that are all looking at this triangle and thinking of different things. So one sees a slice of pizza, one sees, I don't know, a mountain, one sees a protractor, and one sees a diamond. And the takeaway is that you don't know if you're the one who sees the diamond unless you share it, right? And so even though your idea or your perspective may be different, it may be the thing that makes the difference.
For any engineers listening who feel this pressure to fix parts of themselves in order to succeed, what advice would you share? Because you detailed a lot of the stories there of how you really leaned into those differences that may have been criticized. But what would you say to that engineer who's listening, who's struggling with that at the moment?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would just want them to know that they're not alone and that this is really common, right? And so don't feel like it's just you. And also know that your authentic self can be your greatest asset. So the first thing that I want to share is that feedback really is a gift, right? It's a gift that you can receive and make improvements about yourself, or it could be a gift that you say, thank you very much, and chuck in the garbage, right? So it's a gift. And so really it's important to embrace that feedback and even seek it out and challenge yourself to grow. But it's totally okay if that feedback doesn't align with how you see yourself or conflicts with, your own beliefs of how you want to, lead your life or lead how you are in work, then challenge it. Sometimes you can just ignore that feedback and keep going, or you can influence your environment and break those molds that you're being forced into, kind of like the examples that I had previously shared. But also sometimes it might just not be the right environment for you. And so one thing that I do want to share, not to say that, okay, well, if you're getting forced into a stereotype, you got to leave. But I do want to emphasize that, not every job or not every environment is the right situation for you. Just like a plant isn't meant to thrive in every soil or every climate, right? And so finding that right fit for you is important. And so one story that I want to share on the flip side, dovetailing on the other stories that I shared, is that earlier in my career, I found myself in a similar situation where I'd been in a business for several years and I was really successful and I had grown and I'd evolved and I started to feel like I didn't fit in anymore. And the team that I was part of, I wanted to make changes. I wanted to, have an improved team culture, and I wanted more transparency in decision makings, and I wanted us to pursue bigger projects and with bigger impact. And so, in terms of the way that the team was operating, it wasn't in line with what I value in terms of where I evolved. And so I tried those things. Like I tried to speak up and, got that pushback and that feedback. I tried to implement some changes and tried to change that environment to what I consider to be a better state. But ultimately, it just didn't align with where that team and where they wanted to be and what they valued, right? So ultimately, it was a really difficult decision because I was successful there, but it wasn't helping me grow and to be the best version of myself. So I actually decided to change groups. And looking back, it was the best decision I could have made. That group that I left, they still are incredibly successful and are operating in alignment with what they value and prioritize. It just wasn't the best environment for me. And so this new group that I moved to, I was able to take on opportunities and be challenged. And my goals were much more aligned with where that group was going. And so that was, the right decision at that time. And so what I want to encourage anybody that's feeling like they don't fit or they need to fix parts of themselves to succeed, how I would kind of wrap it up, or how I would sum it up, is that, first of all, embrace that feedback and challenge yourself to grow, but also look at that feedback and don't just take it in, but challenge anything if it is challenging your core self, right? And then the second thing is that when you're challenging, hey, is this something that I need to change about myself? Is this really a skill building, or is this really my core self, right? Like, my bubbliness is something about my personality, but there are situations where maybe it isn't appropriate, right? And that's a skill of being able to convey and communicate in a certain way. So is this something about myself, or is this something that is a skill building? And so building a strong network, a support network, whether it's friends, colleagues, mentors, bosses, peers. I have a community of people that I lean on and that I can help kind of bounce and have that check of like, hey, what's your take on this, right? To help you kind of figure out your, take on that feedback. And then the last thing is, be courageous. So whether it's being able to politely decline that feedback and say, okay, thank you so much, and I'm going to continue on and ignoring it, or trying to break that mold and show that you can be bubbly and smart, or mom and, an engineer, or whatever these contradicting things are that you're being forced into, breaking that mold, or finding the right environment and making that move to help yourself grow and be the best that you can be.
I love that so much. There's so many key takeaways there that people can lean into, especially if they're facing a difficult decision that they have to make in a workplace. As we wrap up, I want to talk about workplace culture for a moment, because that really impacts how people show up day to day. From your experience at BD, how can the organizations or even leaders create an environment where people, the employees, feel safe leading and showing up as their authentic selves?
That's a great question, Sam. This is something I think about a lot. And leaders, you don't create authenticity by just saying, hey, go be authentic, right? But you create these safe spaces for people to be able to show up authentically, right? And speaking specifically about BD, we're lucky to have some amazing leaders that do model this authentic leadership and create these safe spaces for that type of culture. And BD also invests in these different associate resource groups, such as the Women's Initiative Network, that fosters communities inside BD and also builds external partnerships like with SWE. And that's actually how I am here today. So, creating these support networks where we talked a little bit about leaning into your network to be able to validate feedback that you're getting, or whether or not your opinion, leaning into these different, resources that the companies provide, such as BD, is a great way to do that. Based on my own personal experience, if you're a leader that wants to create a culture of inclusion and a place where people feel safe being their authentic selves, I kind of break it out into 4 things, right? So one is start modeling that behavior, because it really is a top-down effect. When your leader is showing up authentically, it makes it safe for other people to do so. And it doesn't, again, mean oversharing or being full disclosure or anything like that, but just being true to your core self, doing what you say and being transparent and sharing parts of yourself to make, that culture open for others to do the same. These next 2 are sort of similar in terms of like passive and active in the way that I think about it. So the first thing is creating a safe space for people to be their own authentic selves. And so when I think about that, I think about the ways that you react to people, especially in public, or even when they just share ideas, right? That sends a message on what's okay and what's not, right? And so if you're able to react in a positive way, then it's more likely to happen. But then on the third point, you can also be more active and create an environment that encourages diverse perspectives by asking for those different viewpoints. When I do brainstorming or have led innovation groups, I often tell people, share your background, share your story, tell people what you've done in the past work-wise or, your personal life, because bringing all of that together is going to help you bring more ideas. And so by saying this or asking for what I like to call sometimes bookends of like extreme examples, it more than passively reacts to these differentiating ideas, but it's actively seeking it. So that would be my third piece. And then the fourth piece is asking for feedback. So how do you know if the environment is, a safe space for people to be their authentic selves? How do you know if your team is feeling authentic? Well, you have to find out. So whether it's through honest one-on-ones or anonymous surveys, figure out a way to get a pulse on how your team feels. And then you can decide on what needs to stay the same and what may need to change. That's sort of how I would approach creating that culture as a leader. And ultimately, when leaders show up authentically, it gives everyone else the permission to do the same. And so that's how the culture shifts and outcomes improve.
Christine, there's been so many insights today. And one thing that's really stuck with me is two things can be true. I love that. I feel like I want to get that tattooed. It's such a good reminder for everyone, but especially when showing up as your authentic self, as you so beautifully explained today. Christine, thank you for bringing us into your journey and all of these insights. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it was a pleasure being here. And thanks so much, Sam, for guiding me through, these stories. It's great to be part of this. And thanks so much for your time.
For anyone listening who is inspired by Christine's story and wants to work in a culture where your authenticity is celebrated, you can visit jobs.bd.com for more information on career opportunities at BD. BD empowers and elevates their Global Women's Initiative Network community by driving change and fostering belonging to help its members and all employees achieve their individual goals and personal well-being. I'm Sam East, and from all of us at SWE, thank you for listening.